Okay, so if you've been following my earlier tutorials, you should have a remote server, an EC2 instance, um, and this one is mine right here, and I've made a folder for the things we're going to be doing today called Web Dev Tutorial, and so that's the location of it. And right now we just have a hello world file there, and you should have a remote server. It's a EC2 instance that is hosted on AWS, and we have Dreamweaver hooked up to that remote server so that I can push files up with that up arrow, and when I do that, it changes the files on my remote server. And I also have Git version control hooked up so that I can back up copies of my website, so that I can always roll back to a previous state of my website at each time that I commit code to Git. And that is hosted on a GitHub account, which is right here. And okay, so right now we just have an index and a README. So let's get started now coding a basic Bootstrap framework index. And so today's tutorial we're going to cover the basics of using Bootstrap. So Bootstrap's a responsive mobile-first framework that and toolkit that's open source, so it is both free and we can modify it and contribute to the project. And it's a framework for developing with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The main advantage of using Bootstrap is that when we resize our window or we look at our window through different devices, we get this nice responsive resizing from the Bootstrap framework library. So there's a lot of advantages to using it. That's just the main one that comes to mind. There's a variety of ways of getting the Bootstrap framework on your website. Bootstrap CDN is my preferred way because it both loads faster and we get the latest versions of Bootstrap as they come out. And so and you really only want to do this when you only need Bootstrap's JavaScript and CSS, and that's all we need for this now. If you need more, like plugins, you might want to get to download Bootstrap itself. So let's take a look at what Bootstrap is. If we go to downloads here, we can download the source files and open it up and take a look. We get a lot of stuff here. Notice there's a README. Always check these out. And so we can go and get the GitHub, and what we've got here is the Bootstrap CSS, the Bootstrap JavaScript, and a bunch of other stuff that we're not going to use for this. So because of that, we're going to use CDN. So what this is it's just going to be an absolute link to, secure link to the source code needed for running Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript, and the dependencies needed, which is jQuery and Popper.js at the moment, at the bottom of the page. So if we go to the Bootstrap homepage and click on Get Started, and scroll down a little bit, and we have a nice starter template. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'll explain what this is. I'm going to paste it in here. Alright, so what we have here is just our HTML5 doc type specification, default language, and here's the beginning of our header and the end of our header. So here are some meta tags. We're setting the char set, and these are just Bootstrap Bootstrap global settings that we're going to leave that have to do with resizing for mobile devices. We're not going to mess with those. Here's the file of interest. So this is our CDN. What it is, it's just a link that goes and grabs the Bootstrap CSS. So before we get to our body and our tag elements, where we can start calling Bootstrap classes, we're going to go get their CSS, or we're going to tell the client's browser is rather what's going to happen, to go get this series of files. And at the bottom of the page of our body, inside of our body, but at the bottom of the page, we're going to tell it to go get these scripts, and it's going to be jQuery and Bootstrap JavaScript and this Popper.js library that so Popper and jQuery are both used by Bootstrap, so we're always getting these first and then Bootstrap. And before we render anything in our the head of our page, we also want to go get the CSS style sheet, so that has to be up here because the CSS, the elements need to know, the document object model needs to know how to style things as it's rendering. So, all right. And the JavaScript needs to know about the things that the JavaScript targets. So that has to come after of our body elements. So any other order here, and you will mess up your web page, and it'll be hard to tell what's going on. All right. What this means, this CDN, is that we're going to remote places to go get these files, and we're instructing the browser to do this as well. So now if I click on this up arrow, you can see I'm connected to my remote server and push these changes up. And now if I go in my browser to this hello world, the hello world itself isn't going to change, but if you look over here, the browser's actually gone to these locations and got this huge Popper library with the min.js, and we can we can see it now because we've made them. I've uncompiled them by using the pretty make code pretty command. So let me show you that in action. Actually, it's already uncompiled. How about some? Okay, so this is how it looks to the browser. You see it's all just on one line, so for better rendering with no white space in between things. Down here, print pretty, in our developer tools in a Chrome console, we can make Bootstrap's functions look more human readable by adding white space. So we went and got all those files, as well as the index. So the only file that's actually on my server is this index file. And the index file is telling the browser, hey, go get these scripts. And so then they show up on the browser because as we've rendered the page, we've gone and downloaded those scripts into this browser. All right. So that is a preferable way to do Bootstrap, to set up a Bootstrap framework for a website, in my opinion, because browsers actually cache these libraries, meaning that other websites that rely on jQuery, Bootstrap, and Popper will also tell your user's browser to go get these. And the user's browser is smart, so it hangs on to these so that when they come to your website, they don't have to actually go out to these physical servers and get these files. They already have them, so the web page loads faster is the moral of the story, and the real reason to use CDN over having those files remotely. There's an element of loss of control so that's the downside of using CDN. You get faster load times, you get the latest versions, However, if any of these servers go down, which is very, very unlikely, we can't control the state of other people's servers. So your web page won't work, won't render the way that you want it to if their servers go down. Whereas if you had local copies of all these libraries on your server, so that would be like here in my website, I would have index.html and then a bootstrap, .js file, so we can simulate that. Let me go to my downloads, bootstrap. Let's find the JavaScript. Nope. Let's find Bill? No. There we go. So we could just get the Bootstrap JS with a min.js. The difference between these is min is going to be all one line. It's going to render faster but be harder to modify. And I could just get it as a normal file, put it in here. That didn't work. Let's drag and drop it. So I could put that in there, I could go back, I could get the Bootstrap CSS, put that in there, and then link to them in the standard way. So link, and we want to do rel equals style sheet href equals, and since it's right there, we could just do bootstrap .css, and that's it. And so that is, and we could do the same thing for JavaScript now down here. Because we don't have jQuery or Popper, we'd have to go download those as well. But if we wanted a local copy of those, we could certainly get them. They're both open source as well. So script source equals bootstrap .js. There we go. So that is the alternative way of doing that. And so now, if we push that up to our server, these two files that we now have here, we know the state of them. We can modify them at will. If we want to change the Bootstrap classes itself, it's usually better to have your own custom style.css class that you load after Bootstrap, and you and override the Bootstrap things that you need to, rather than modify the Bootstrap file itself. That's just a better practice, because as Bootstrap, gets better, as new versions of Bootstrap come out, then our overrides would still be there in a custom style sheet, and we could still stay up to date with Bootstrap. So better development practice for that is to just override the CSS defaults using important tags, or just by giving them more importance to the browser with custom classes, custom tags. So so now if we go to our server, we can see, did I push those up yet? Let's push those files up. Oh, and one thing to note, the things, you have to select the files. If you select everything, you can push everything up at once. That is an important thing to know. Okay, so now we have the Bootstrap CSS and JS right here, as well as links to them there. So I am going to get rid of these local copies because I don't need them. that. Just delete it. Delete. Okay, so now we have an index, and the index is CDNing, and we have a title and an H1 element, and that's about it. All right. So, first thing, let's give it a new title. So the plan for this index is I want a web page that I can display embedded YouTube tutorial links, and student work that give me their permission to put their web development work online for people to learn from. And so YouTube links, student work, and bios, and links to examples of my web dev work. So it'll be like a learning, or I don't know. Yeah, learning mobile first web. Well, we'll just say web development. That's going to be my title. And then we can. Okay, so now let's go to the Bootstrap web page, and if you scroll down, it'll explain these meta tags and the global variables. Now, okay, so we can go to examples. Now they have templates and components ready for us. So I quite like the Bootstrap carousel. So that's when like you can have images and text here. So this is what we're going to go for, with images in the background, and when we scroll up, the headlines and the images change like this. I think this would be quite nice for like the team, which is me at the moment. But you know, as if we had like more teachers join this website, or students that wanted to get involved, we could put their pictures there, maybe bios, something like that. And then here we could do links to examples of different types of web pages. So Bootstrap, WordPress. So all this looks quite good. Not sure I care for that carousel. You know, this would be a place where you put like your company logo. Search bar is nice, and looks like they have some reactive. So as we scroll down, you see that nav bar stays. They have a fixed nav bar at the top. So this seems like a good thing to start with. Alright, so in order to start with this, you can see I'm on the examples page. We could go to this Bootstrap 4.0 that we've downloaded and try and find it. But I'm actually going to show you how to just grab the code from this website itself using your developer tools. I think this is a good skill to have. So any website you're on, you can always Control-Shift-I, or right, so you could go here, go to more tools, and then developer tools to see that. And there's cool things you can do here. Right now I'm at a device view of this, and I've selected the iPhone. This is a good way of debugging your website and seeing how it looks on various devices. You just click that box right there, or Control-Shift-M. Alright, so I'm on the Bootstrap web page, and I want this carousel code. I want to see how they did it, modify it, and make it my own. And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go over to sources here, and I'm on that index. And now I could just save that as an HTML, but I'm just going to take a look at the code that they've got. And so it looks like they are it's a good idea to use these meta tags too, so let's copy those and put them in our header here. This is for search indexing mainly, so search engines know what we're about. Content. Website for making websites. Oops. Name. Content. Begin. Cool. Alright, so let's go back to my browser. We could put in, oh yeah, this is a good thing to know how to do. Let's put in a link for our favicon. So that is this little guy up here on all web pages, and we're going to need an image for that. So let's put that here, and for the href, let's make it, so this doesn't have to be a favicon.ico anymore, but you know, it can be. So let's make Rocky our favicon. Pull that picture in, rename it favicon.jpg, and just put that extension in, save it. Okay, so none of that had to do with the carousel itself. Now let's get that code. Alright. So they're going and getting Bootstrap, and then this custom styles sheet. So carousel.css style sheet. And notice that they get that after Bootstrap. So let's copy that and put it after our CDN link for Bootstrap. And so now let's go get their CSS file. So we can see that it's right here, right? So we could either, let's just see if we can save that as, yeah, we just want that whole file. We can save it in downloads for now, and then I'm just going to pull it in to my project here. Okay. So now this link to carousel.css goes there. At this point, though, I can tell this is going to start to get messy. So good development practices, I'm going to make a images folder. I'm going to some right clicking, going to new folder, and oops, don't want a subfolder there. Images folder, and then a new folder for JavaScript, and then a new folder for CSS. And this README we don't actually need anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that. So just good development practices to keep your code organized. Now we can put this favicon into images, and we can automatically update the links. That's a really cool function of Dreamweaver, so that you'll see it's now put the href in images / favicon JPEG. Index has to stay there. Carousel we can put in CSS, and once again we can automatically update our link. And so this href is now going to the folder CSS, and getting that carousel.css class. Alright. Now, if we scroll back here, let's go ahead and go back to the index of this carousel class, and inside of the body, let's just grab this code all the way down to the end of main. And you'll see at the bottom, I'm just going to copy that. The bottom here, they're getting their core Bootstrap JavaScript, and we've already taken care of that, so we don't need to worry about that. So now here over in Dreamweaver, where our head element starts, ends, and our body element starts, instead of hello world, I'm going to paste that code. And there we go, we have that navbar. Now, right now, it doesn't have any images, so I'm going to, in my images folder, I'm going to put some. So I have some images of, it's just screenshots of websites that I've made, and I'm just going to throw those screenshots in here and use them for the carousel images so that they rotate. And so I have so this is a Bootstrap class right here. It's an expanding navbar, and this is that carousel element that I wasn't crazy about, so I'm just going to get rid of that, the brand. We can add that later, add that back in later if we want. Actually, you know what? Let's comment it out. Okay. So for some reason we don't have a shortcut for HTML comments. We could go into that later, but I'll just comment this out by hand. Oh. There we go. Alright, so that won't render, but if we ever want to add a navbar brand in, we can do that later. So we have this. Next, a button class for navbar toggler, and so this is going to allow us to collapse into a nice button here when the screen is small like that. And that's what all that is doing. And then finally we have these hrefs. So home is in fact this website here, and you'll see that we have this list item, so an unordered list here, and it's of class type nav bar nav Mr. Auto, and then a list item which is a nav item class, and we've set it to active. So that's just why this particular, the home, is highlighted while is links and disabled or not. And so SR current, that's fine. And then we have a link, nav item, nav link. And you'll see, like, as we scroll over it, we get this reactive change. We haven't really done anything to, Bootstrap is giving that to us by this being a navbar item. So by this being a Bootstrap CSS class, we get those reactive elements automatically. Alright, this disabled example I don't really want, so let's start adding elements to this code. So for here, let's do like tutorials, and this can be student link work, and let's add another list item. Well, let's take this disabled out. We don't need that. We just want a nav link, and so we'll have student work, tutorials, and then website examples. So paste that, copy and paste that code, and example websites. Alright. Yep, looks good. Okay, so that's all fine. The active one is home. So then we have, this is our search bar. I'm going to leave that alone. And then that's the end of our header. Back to index. Alright, so inside of main, we have this div, and here's our first ID that we've seen. So that's going to be referenced as a tag. And our class is called carousel slide. Our data ride is going to be carousel, and then we have a ordered list and data targets for our slides. So we don't need to mess with those. If we wanted to add an additional slide or take away a slide, we would just copy and paste one of these. And that's where that ordered list ends. So now inside of the class, in the class carousel inner, if we go to class item active, we have this first slide image tag. Okay, so right now there's nothing there, so we're just going to give that source our images folder path, and then we'll give it website1 png. And for the headline, so I like the text being left, so we'll leave that carousel caption text left there. We'll say, learn to make websites. And for this p element, we can put learn the basics, or from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript basics to advanced remote server skills. Yeah, and then for the button, we could say see example websites, and we'll leave the href blank there. Eventually we can link to an example websites.html. Well, yeah, we'll do that later. So this tutorial, we're just doing the index. Alright, so for the second one, we'll do the same thing, except we'll do images / website2. These are just quick screenshots I took, so you can see it's not very clear what's going on our web page. You'd want to mess around with those photos in Photoshop to get it to look the way you want. And for image 2, we can say use WordPress and AWS EC2 instance lamp servers. Create and host your website for free while learning advanced. You said advanced too many times. Amazon Web Services and WordPress. Learn more is fine for that. And then finally we have one more image, so we're gonna do images /2. There we go. We could give more descriptive alternate descriptions, but let's just to save time not worry about that. For the H1, we'll do learn Bootstrap the easy way. And make your own Bootstrap website with industry or good development practices and a setup, watch tutorials. So we link to our tutorials web page there once we make one. Alright, so carousel, so these are just the previous and the previous icon for going back and going forward, the next and the next icon. So we can leave all those there. Alright, let's take everything below that out, and then we'll take the features out. I don't really want those. And feature it divider. There's that container. So I'm just going to delete all that, but I'll have a nice container class, which over here in carousel, we've got these marketing classes that are going to handle our margins and center things as 3 columns. So I'm going to keep those in. We don't have any featurette classes anymore, so we can get rid of that in our CSS. And we'll leave the responsive, because that is what is making our carousel work. Marketing content, let's just call main container, and we could call this custom container, custom container, and custom container. So we know what that actually is. And then over here in index, oops, we have you see we've broken that container a bit. So in this div class, we're just gonna say custom container. Alright, so as we put more stuff into our index below this, we can put them inside of this container to wrap all and center all the content. And I don't really see any reason for that anymore, or that. Okay, so I'm just cleaning up the web page so we can develop with it later on. The footer is pretty nice. We might want to add an image there, so let's say 2000. Well, that's fine. Company Inc. will do Daniel Pekian. And we could have links to privacy policy later. That sounds good. And a terms policy, and then I like the back to top link being in there. So I'll leave all that alone. And alright, so good industry standard practice now is to go over to Git, and you'll see we have these untracked files. And I don't actually need the Dreamweaver sync XML, but I need all of the rest of these to be on my server in order for this to work when somebody goes to my web page. But I want to commit those first and say started using Bootstrap and tutorials, built basic carousel index. Okay, and then we want to push those to our remote Git branch. It's going to write the images, will take a little longer. And now if we go to Web Dev tutorial, we had 2 commits, we should see 3 in just a second. Whenever this finishes. Okay, so now we should see 3. There we go. So now if we click on that commit, we can see that we've added, click on it again, that we've added all this code. So there's a CSS file, there's the images we added, the things we deleted from index, and the things we added to index. So anytime I wanted, I could roll back to this basic state of my web page now by going to Git, grabbing the code at this state and then reloading that to my server. Alright, so on my server right now, we just have this hello world still, and we still have these two Bootstrap files. So let's fix that now that we have a copy of this on Git. So I'm going to switch back to files, and you'll see I'm disconnected from my remote server, so let's go ahead and connect. Now I'm connected, and I'm going to collapse these, and I'm just going to select everything. So I held down Shift and clicked, and then I'm going to push everything up. So you can see it's pushing up carousel, favicon, JPEG, website PNGs. If we go, let's give it a second to finish. Alright, file activity complete. So now if we go to a tutorial, you can see we have these new files. One of the PNGs didn't make it up. Huh. Okay. Let's see what's going on with that. Let's push those up again. Might have just been a browser thing. And then check, make sure all the images. Is one of these? That is odd. Which one isn't making it up? The third one, right? Site 1, website 2, website 3. Alright, so perhaps because we didn't link to that, it didn't think it had to upload that. I'm not sure. But I'm going to upload those again. And I'm going to push my index up again and see how things look on my server. There we go. Alright. Just not getting those, huh? Website 3 PNG not found. So what is the difference there? That is really strange. Can't push one of the PNG files up. Interesting. Alright, I'm going to hit sync now, and I want to sync the entire web dev site. And what I want to do is put new files to remote, delete files not on local drive, and then preview that. Alright, so it's going to get rid of those Bootstrap files on my server now, which is fine. Yes. So everything's working fine locally, I believe. That third one still is not working. One, two, and three. Alright. Let's see what's going on. Website. There we go. Okay. Push that again. Push that again. And now our browser is going to care about that image. And so if we go to source, now we can't see the second one. There we go. Alright. So what that was we did have the images up on our server, but our browser didn't really care about it because we didn't have a link to it properly. It was a one letter typo. So that was good that we ran into that as a learning experience of how to debug these things when what's going on your server isn't necessarily what's going on in your local view. So everything's working fine now. We've got this drop-down menu and this search bar. You can see the images are kind of confusing because it looks like that's a website, and there's like pictures there. But the main thing is that our carousel's working. As we scroll down, we've got this search bar still there, and everything looks good as the beginning of our website. Alright, so I will stop there. That's just a beginning introduction to Bootstrap and how to start coding with Bootstrap. Creating your own custom code, how to set up the jQuery dependencies and the Bootstrap CSS, and how to have your own custom style sheet, right, like this CSS, linked after Bootstrap so that you can add styles to Bootstrap from that custom style sheet. Now before I stop, I'm going to go over to Git and track these, commit these changes. Fixed bug in carousel images. Okay, push those to my remote. Good. Okay, so now my remote server, I have a nice stable copy of my website, and I can see the changes and the bug that we found. Cool. Thank you for listening.